Phillip Glass, as many of you have heard of him for a very long time, and well, I will tell you first how he received one of my works. Phillip Glass lives downtown in the Lower East Side. The experience is very surreal because Phillip Glass is like our modern Mozart. He's someone who that truly followed his own path in the most brilliant way. But everything moved around him from back in the 70s and 80s, and very rapidly, and he always made sure to deliver. Meaning, what do I mean by this? By saying by deliver, I mean that in classical music, you can be a instrumentalist and play all kinds of music. You can play Mozart, Beethoven, Paganini. You can play anything you want. Brahms, Haydn, anything you want. And there's a expertise, and there's a talent, and there's a passion, commitment, burning hour after hour, starting very young. It's a whole process of molding yourself, of mutating, of converting yourself into something absolutely extraordinary that only a few can gain that platform. And look, the best example that I can give you, the example of Glenn Gould, the pianist. He was well known for playing Bach, and how on his later years he became very passionate about composing. And it's not the same. It will never be the same. No matter what talent, how talented you are. Because all the hours that you employ to become that person in this world were meant to become a instrumentalist, to play Bach and Beethoven as well, and many other, and Mozart, but mainly Glenn Gould this category to really mastering Bach's works. So, but he would never really truly became a composer per se. He tried, but it didn't cut any ground. And there's a lot of other composers or musical directors that have been very hard on Glenn Gould. Very hard on him. Which I don't think is fair at all. But anyways, so going back to Phillip Glass. So I'm trying to make a parallel between, what it means to be an instrumentalist versus a composer. So Phillip Glass has started very young, finding and developing his own voice as a composer, which is the hardest thing in the world. Where you could drive anybody into pretty heavy-duty depressions if you are aware of who you are and how hard it will be to achieve that level. First of all, of recognition, which it matters, the world. But the other is if your work truly speaks, by itself alone. And his breakthrough in the late 70s and 80s with this kind of repetitive intonations of the note started from the root and going next to the fifth and then the octave, or creating arpeggios where they would go up and down repetitively. A draft would be something like and then you can manipulate the harmony and the changes, but the rhythmic was molding the concept of his style. And then it became a trademark because it was very well used in many contemporary movies. And he started to work with many people in Hollywood using this kind of signature. So you recognize, that's Phillip Glass. Many composers later on obviously took from that and nurtured themselves with this new style. I think that usually what happens is you cannot escape it. When you come with something new, no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try to protect it, it will get copied and stolen because it's just how the world works. But he had a very clear platform to give his music to the whole world and to show it. And one of the famous videos is the one with the cars, that you can see the city and the cars are moving given the sense of speed of light, different colors. I mean, it's a beautiful art form. And nobody really got me curious about who directed or who created that video. I'm gonna Google that afterwards. So anyway, but it was a perfect match of playing with this kind of speed and velocity, with the traffic, going around the city, and this constancy of the music. Which is very interesting because if you dive heavily into the classical masters, composers, and their notes, their hidden notes and documents that is not really open for too many people that want to explore what these masters left. Brahms was one of those who battled intensively to himself to being denied of being the next Beethoven, because when Beethoven passed away, all this was a big gap for the Romantic era to be born, thanks to Brahms. And then I came across a document where Brahms was actually talking about these interfaces and arpeggios in constancy, the root, the fifth, and the octave. I didn't dive deeply into it. But I had a pretty good understanding of, that's when I attended Juilliard, of what it was all about, coming from Brahms. But if you listen to Brahms' music, most likely you're not going to find that kind of repetitive pattern. So the best example of that repetitive pattern would be Bach, without a question, right? The 80s kick in and this video is born, this famous video with the cars and the lights and his music. That's his breakthrough to the world. He was definitely known before that. And it was very well recognized. But to the regular audience, that video was his breakthrough. So that's why I call him the modern Mozart. Because he did something that only a few composers can get away with. A stamp on the music world, history of the world. That's very powerful and beautiful. And I finally was able to say hello to him. And I was so happy. And I said, Mr. Glass, did you receive my art piece? And he said, yes, I actually did. Well, that's from me to you. I think I said, from one artist to another artist, something to say, because you don't really, you can't say anything. You just can't. But he really remembered and said, oh yes. And he told me that he really liked the work a lot. So those are, to me, the pivotal moments of my life in a very obscure way, for sure, where, you know what they say, you have to do what you have to do. And I felt in that moment that I wanted him to have one of my works. And so you can see him nowadays walking by the neighborhood, going to his house. I mean, I always gonna admire him because, once again, he did something that it was very impossible to achieve. To leave a stamp in this world, worldwide, about his music as a composer. We do have an American Mozart, and he lives downtown in the Village. Go figure. I'm going to show you this. So you see this. This is a swatch. This is my swatch watch that I have. I picked up this one. But Phillip Glass used to have a Phillip Glass swatch watch edition back in the 80s with music that you would press a button and a composition of his would appear sounding throughout the swatch. That's how cool it was. So I have a little surprise for you, where I'm going to share with you a music score that I wrote a couple of years ago throughout my period, you know, when I attended Juilliard. Evening division, it's a big difference, evening division. And it means a lot to me because it has a clarinet. My father used to play the clarinet, and that was all what I needed to make this piece, you know, flourish. But without a question, I wrote also this piece of music thinking about Phillip Glass's style, which is going to be super obvious once you guys hear it. But the harmony and the movement and how the clarinet, you know, moves around, it brings everything together. Exordium in Greek means introduction. And I'm super proud of this piece. I can't believe that I got away with it. I mean, yeah, it's a beautiful piece. I really like it a lot. So I'm just gonna play the music right now. And this is dedicated to Phillip Glass and to celebrate him now, today. So enjoy.